Reza, it feels like every other week we get an email about a massive new data breach, and identity fraud has become a multi-billion-dollar crisis. With artificial intelligence making it easier than ever for hackers to impersonate people, how vulnerable is the average person's credit right now?
So at this point, consumers should behave as though their basic personal information has already been exposed. Just assume your information is exposed, it's out there on the internet. The FTC receives what, like a million or more identity theft reports every year. Actually, the most dangerous information out there is not a stolen password. It's actually more permanent information about yourself, like your social security, your date of birth, your credit history, and your, let's say, your address. And what AI does, and which is actually quite scary, is that it has changed the economics of fraud. It allows criminals to create convincing emails, fake documents, even do voice impressions, and at enormous scale. So AI actually did invent identity theft. It just industrialized impersonation. And that's what we should like start understanding. And the biggest risk to your credit is actually new account fraud. Someone using your identity to open up a new credit card or a personal loan, and something that you might not even discover for many, many months. And that's very, very concerning. And I would say, with AI, your identity can now be attacked at software speed. But most consumers are out there protecting it with paperwork era defenses. And it's not going to work. So we have to keep up. Every individual has to keep up. We just don't have a choice.
When someone actually falls victim to identity theft, the damage isn't just financial. It's an absolute administrative nightmare. What does the cleanup process look like, and how much time do people waste trying to fix it?
Oh, look, identity theft is not just about losing money. It's about force to prove that you are you and that the criminal isn't you. And that's the most annoying part. You have to contact your lenders, your credit bureaus, debt collectors, and sometimes even law enforcement. That is just a real pain. You have to identify closed and fraudulent accounts, and it's just an administrative nightmare. And victims of complicated or multiple forms of identity theft spend considerably more time than somebody disputing a single fraudulent charge. In some cases, these things continue for weeks or months. And when financial institutions out there that promise, your identity protection, that they will make you whole, they will absorb the fraudulent charge, for example. But the average consumer, average person out there, has to absorb the time, the stress, and the damage that these kinds of frauds cost to you. And and here's the interesting part: you don't actually sometimes catch this in time. Fraudulent accounts can surface at the worst moment. Let's say when you're applying for a loan, and suddenly you check your credit, and then whoa, wait a minute, this I never got this loan, and that's another really really difficult and annoying thing to deal with. And the nightmare is discovering that theft occurs after a lender tells you their credit no longer belongs to the person you thought you were. Right? It happens at the wrong time. And there's actually a statistic that I read that the a victim of victims of fraudulent identity theft have to spend 7 hours on average over multiple weeks and months at times to fight identity theft, and over 10% actually take over a month. And this is just statistics that's out there, and I think we have to ask ourselves: do we have the time for this? Do we want to deal with this? And if you survey people, it's like absolutely not.
Instead of paying hundreds of dollars a year for expensive identity monitoring apps that just tell you after you've been robbed, you advocate for a completely free strategy, the credit freeze. What is a credit freeze, and why is it so incredibly effective?
Yeah. So most people and most advice that is given out there is about credit monitoring. Monitor your credit, and you'll be fine. Actually, that's not the best advice in my opinion. Credit monitoring is like a smoke alarm, and a credit freeze is like a deadbolt. Credit freeze restricts prospective lenders from accessing your credit report. Most lenders will not open an account if they cannot report your credit report. And so freeze blocks one of the most important ways for new account fraud. It's free, available to everybody, and remains in place until you lift it. So you have to you have to freeze your credit separately with Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And here's the best part: even if a criminal has your social security number, they still need a lender to cooperate. A freeze makes that cooperation far less likely because a lender, if they can't see your credit report, will not give that fraudulent person a debt or a loan or a card on your behalf. So monitoring still has value. It can alert you to suspicious activity, account fraud, etc. But it just detects trouble. It doesn't prevent it. A freeze prevents a major category of trouble. And it's something that 90% of people actually have not done. Only 10% of people actually have frozen their credit. It is like the most important thing you do to protect yourself from financial fraud.
People often hesitate to freeze their credit because they're afraid of the side effects. Let's bust the myths. Does freezing your credit hurt your credit score? And does it prevent you from using your current credit cards?
Yeah. So freezing your credit freezes access. It doesn't freeze your credit score. It doesn't freeze your financial life. It just freezes access. It does not lower your credit score. It does not close or disable existing credit cards. That's another myth. And you can continue just with your regular spending, making payments, using your bank accounts normally, and nothing changes. Your existing lenders still continue reporting positive or negative data to your credit files, and your credit score can still move up or down. The freeze is just simply not part of the credit score calculation. So with a credit freeze, you're not freezing your ability to use credit. You're just freezing a stranger's ability to apply for new credit on your behalf. And that is what's really happening. And so the credit freeze is absolutely an incredibly innocuous thing you can do, but that is extremely powerful in preventing fraud.
What happens when someone actually wants to buy a car or apply for a loan? How complicated is the freeze and thaw process when you legitimately need to use your credit?
Yeah, a credit freeze is a lock. It's not a wall. You still have the keys. You can log into the bureau, all the three bureaus' websites, and unlock and temporarily lift a freeze. You don't have to permanently lift it. You can temporarily lift it and put it back on after they've checked your credit. And it's federal law that if you actually request a freeze, it must be done within 1 hour of you requesting a freeze. So it's actually very quick. And what I tell everybody is that the inconvenience is a few minutes when you choose to apply for a loan or a financial product. The alternative is if you're a victim of a credit fraud, it's weeks of cleanup. So a few minutes versus weeks of stress and pain, the trade-off is very clear.
If your credit report is completely locked down and frozen to outsiders, how does that affect a tool like Ava? Can someone still safely build up their payment history and optimize their score while their credit is frozen?
Yeah. A freeze stops new outsiders from pulling your credit. It does not stop existing accounts from contributing positive information. If someone already has an active relationship with Ava, a credit freeze does not prevent Ava from reporting eligible payments, on-time payments, your trade lines. All it does, it just prevents new creditors from accessing your report without your permission. And so, consumer can continue building a strong credit profile, and the credit freeze has absolutely no impact on that. And something to also note: a credit freeze does not lock your score in place. It's a lock on access, not on your credit score. Your credit score can still go up, and the credit freeze has absolutely no impact on that.
For anyone watching this who feels like their personal data is scattered all over the internet and that identity theft is just inevitable, what is the most important takeaway they should know about taking back control of their digital identity?
I tell this to anyone who's willing to listen. Your data does not belong to the bureaus or the hackers, it belongs to you. Your credit profile is part of your financial identity, and access to it should require your permission. And that's what credit freeze does. It asks for your consent to access your credit profile. And this should be normal. It shouldn't be an exception. And you may not be able to remove your personal information from every breach, but you can make that information much harder to monetize. So freezing your credit with all three bureaus just makes it harder for fraudsters. It does not make your life harder. And that's something that you should always keep in mind. So I would say that, you can't control all the data that's out there, but you can control whether a criminal can easily turn that data into debt in your name.